Traditionally, the Labour Party has supported this fund, but as the years go on, Minister, we do need to look at it and how it's functioning. It is out of place with how the budgetary process works. It was put in at a certain time. The formula by which the calculations are made are locked from that time. And certainly, I think this year of all years, you really need to look at it before it comes through a budgetary cycle next year. I'm on the PAC as well as Deputy Carty, and we don't know of any other formula that is used in this way. So while supporting funding for both industries, and I come from Tipperary, literally a few fields away from where Tiger Roll was bred. It's a huge county, probably the biggest county in Ireland when it comes to both horse racing and greyhound racing. While supporting the funding, we do need to look at the formula by which this is achieved. It's absolutely needed. We also need to look at the overall prospect of how this fund operates vis-à-vis other funding when it comes to other parts of government, i.e. sports capital and other forms of funding that's given out to sport and organisations in general. Because there does seem to be a mix and match approach rather than an actual holistic approach, and that really needs to be looked at in totality. To see is there fairness, to see is there fairness in relation to how distribution is being performed. Furthermore, in relation to the fund, if we look at how the fund is administered by both relevant organisations, we see that on the Greyhound side of things, a lot of the funding is actually going into the administration rather than prizes, while the opposite is the case in relation to the HRI and funding. We also need to see that more of the actual fund and prizes in particular need to drift towards actually a fair distribution, particularly when it comes to horse racing. That there are formulas put in place to ensure that the smaller providers, smaller breeders, smaller trainers and owners are getting a fair crack at the whip. And I can speak very locally about that, because where I come there are an awful lot of smaller breeders and trainers, and they would raise this with me quite a bit. Obviously, when it comes to animal welfare, we need, whatever formula is used into the future and whatever process is used, we need to have ring-fence funding when it comes to welfare. We also, Minister, and I ask you to specifically look at this, when it comes to the Greyhound Board, that there is somebody put on that board with a specific interest in this area that will increase the fund in particular, and will increase the percentage of their funding that's used for welfare in particular, and look at that. I think that would be a good recommendation, and I think most people in the House would support it. In relation to our amendment, we're asking that we look now at this stage, after all of these years, to see how this fund can be used to its obviously huge economic benefit to rural areas and rural counties, and also urban areas, but how that can be more fairly distributed. Furthermore, we need to, as I've said, look at how it can ensure higher standards in animal welfare, and something that's often forgotten about. In fact, I think I'm the only person who keeps raising this year in, year out. We need a sectoral order in relation to employment rights, particularly when it comes to horse racing. There are thousands of people employed. I am concerned, among some very small but some amount of people who work in that industry, that they are being treated very unfairly, very low rates of pay, and not good working conditions, terms and conditions. So a sectoral order in that area, I think, would be a really, really important component. We also need to see how we can ensure that overall this fund is distributed more fairly and integrated across all other sports funding. And I ask you to do this quickly, because by next year, within the budgetary cycle, I don't want to be in front of the PAC asking all these questions again. I'd like to have this sorted out, because it is going to keep coming up, because it is so unique. And furthermore, Minister, I think the time is right now to do it, given the gambling legislation that is also coming into place, because I think there's a lap over between two, so the timing now, I think, is optimal. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. And now we have the Social Democrats. There's 5 minutes. Are you sharing, or is just Deputy Kearns? You have 5